Hey, it's Sarah Burke here from the Women in Media Podcast. And before we get started on a new episode, could I get you to hit like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell, whichever app you do your podcast listening in. Make sure you're all set up so you know when there's a new episode and you can help spread the word. Oh, and if you're so inclined, could I ask you to leave a review if the app that you're using does that? You're the best. All right, let's get to the show. Based on our physiology alone, by default, women have a completely different experience in their professional lives than a man would. And that boys' club is still very much a thing. What's so interesting to me about women in media is that most of what we go through happens in or near the spotlight. I'm Sarah Burke, and this is my new podcast, where I want to explore the challenges women face in the media, in and outside of that spotlight. On this podcast, I want to empower women in the media to share their stories, and all of my guests will have two things in common. They're in the spotlight in some way, shape, or form with a platform and following, and what they say matters. And we're all operating within the constraints of a system, an industry that's been historically male and white and still is. There are stories to be shared from so many different cultures and gender identities too. I want to hear it all. Over the years, I think women in media have been conditioned to feel against one another, and I've felt it from both positions above and below my pay grade. I want to explore that. This is not the kind of podcast where you're going to hear me blaming men for everything. Men are just as much puppets in this system. So let's call the Women in Media Podcast a place to reflect, a place to ask questions, a place to share stories, and most importantly, a place to empower. I want the women in media of tomorrow to want to join us rather than compete with us or each other. And you know what? It's a good thing I'm diving a little deeper into podcasting because both my current and former bosses would say I'm still working on being concise. How long has this thing been rolling? That's the beauty of this world, and there's a lot more to be said than what will fit into a 1-minute break. I can't wait to share my first guest with you, and she's the person who inspired me to become a radio host in the first place. So I hope you'll join us for episode 1.
I'm Don Amero, and I want to welcome you to Through the Fire, a podcast about overcoming adversity, reframing misfortune, and celebrating courage. You'll likely know me best as a musician. Maybe you've heard my music or seen me perform live before. And at the heart of what I do is storytelling. How we come out of the fire may be the most interesting part of our stories. So I invite you to join us for some incredible conversations. Through the Fire is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or at donamero.ca.
Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.